The Meghan Markle yacht girl claims simply will not go away. And you know, I've spoken about this before.
The reason why these pictures are so problematic for Meghan Markle is because these pictures place her with Jeffrey Epstein.
Things about Meghan that we all have some evidence of. I mean, what is she doing on the yacht? Why did David Boies want to question her? Why is she with Karina Shuliak?
We already broke down what Tom Bower revealed in Betrayal. Camilla's 6 sharp words, that brutal brand audit that shook their whole operation, and the moment Harry was told his own wife had damaged his earning power. That part alone raised eyebrows everywhere. But here's what kept bothering me after we wrapped that up.
Pathetic, not so funny, it's actually tragic. What Harry revealed by that is a complete lack of any self-awareness, of any understanding of reality.
The Sussexes have taken hits from all sides in print. Piers Morgan, Samantha Markle, Valentine Lowe, even Thomas Markle Sr. And they stayed completely silent every single time. No response. Nothing. When Tom Bower dropped his first book, Revenge, labeling Meghan as a manipulative social climber, again, silence. Not a word. Not even a subtle pushback. Then, Omid Scobie's endgame stirred chaos by accidentally exposing senior royals, and still, they kept quiet. But this time with Betrayal, everything flipped.
This week described Meghan Markle as previously having been a, quote, yacht girl.
I think it left around about $8,000 behind, which was a fraction, a tiny fraction of what she expected. And no one could understand who paid for the trip. And she leaked it.
Just 12 days before the book even hit shelves, their team went into full panic mode and released one of the strongest statements they've ever put out, calling it deranged, calling it melodrama. That reaction had people, including me, thinking the fear was about the brainwashing claims, the charity issues, maybe even that Invictus footage. Sounds logical, right? Wrong. Because when you actually read through the Times excerpts carefully, front to back, something feels off. Something important is missing. The part that truly scared them.
No one in the mainstream media has been brave enough to go there. Well, that has just changed.
It's not even in the book. At least, not yet. The excerpts touched on Harry's isolation, Camilla's warning, the charity fallout, but there's one specific topic, one angle, that Bower's reputation makes extremely risky for Meghan, and somehow it hasn't been mentioned once. Not a single time. Keep that in mind because just 4 days after those excerpts dropped, things took another turn. Someone at The Spectator stepped in and said what others wouldn't dare to put in print.
Meghan Markle's alleged yacht girl days. Now, a big piece in the esteemed British publication, The Spectator, written by a brilliant writer, Julie Burchill, well, it kind of goes into sort of a very, shall we say, light-hearted look.
Now, Julie Burchill is a controversial figure. She was dismissed from the Daily Telegraph in 2021 over a widely criticised tweet, and later paid damages in a separate case involving comments about a journalist. Many major outlets have distanced themselves from her, but she still writes for The Spectator, and that carries weight. This is a publication that's been around since 1828, older than the Crimean War, with editors and legal teams reviewing every line before it goes live. So when she published a column on March 17, 2026, targeting Meghan's upcoming luxury women's retreat in Sydney, people paid attention.
The fact that we now have a mainstream media figure, a very famous one, posing the question directly, I want to ask Meghan Markle about her yacht girl past. To me, it feels like quite a significant moment.
The retreat itself, tickets priced at nearly $3,000 Australian dollars. And the column didn't hold back. It came off sharp, personal, and deliberately provocative, exactly in line with her usual style. But right in the middle of all that mockery, there was one line that made everything stop cold. She asked how many yachts Meghan had been a guest on before meeting the prince, then added, double figures, or even triple. Read that again. Double figures, or triple. She didn't question if it happened. She treated it like a given and only questioned the number.
A lot of speculation in the papers about the fact that Meghan might have met Prince Andrew while a guest on Jeffrey Epstein's yacht.
And somehow, That exact line cleared editors, cleared legal review, and got printed in one of the oldest magazines in the English language. This isn't some random YouTube comment or a messy Reddit thread. This isn't a TikTok rumor floating around for clicks. This is The Spectator in print, putting it out there where everyone can see it. For 7 years, talk like this stayed buried in obscure forums and anonymous accounts, places most people ignored. Mainstream British media acted like it didn't exist at all. Until now, that column didn't prove anything about Meghan's past, but it showed something just as serious. It signaled that parts of the media are no longer willing to stay quiet. That shift happened on March 17th, and it changed the tone completely. But before going any further, something needs to be made clear. This topic has been flooded with misinformation, edited images, invented quotes, and conspiracy content so extreme that entire YouTube channels were taken down earlier this year.
Has to be something that we continue to talk about, because there is something there that we need to find the missing pieces to, because I believe a lot of it was scrubbed off of the internet way before we even knew who Meghan Markle was.
So a hard line is being drawn here. Everything discussed is either backed by public records or comes from clearly identified sources. If it doesn't meet that standard, it doesn't belong in this conversation. No interest in fiction, no interest in rumors that can't stand up, only what can actually be traced and verified. Now here's where things start connecting. Marcus Anderson, the global membership director at Soho House, built his career from the ground up, starting as a waiter and eventually becoming a trusted figure alongside founder Nick Jones. He met Meghan during her Suits years in Toronto, and from there he stayed close.
He just behaved as the arrogant.
Sussexes kind of ran out of road with the victimhood narrative.
Well, I think that's exactly why they're now desperate. I mean, there's no interest in them anymore.
He attended her royal wedding in 2018 and showed up again at her New York baby shower in 2019. Royal correspondent Katie Nicholl reported on Channel 4 that Prince Harry asked Anderson to set up a private meeting with Meghan at Soho House. Not a casual date, but something arranged carefully behind the scenes. Now, Anderson wasn't the very first connection. Harry's own memoir confirms that Violet von Westenholz introduced them through Instagram back in July 2016. But after that introduction, Anderson became central to everything. He handled the logistics, coordinated the early meetups, managed introductions. He wasn't just involved, he was driving the process from behind the curtain. And this is where the tone shifts. Tom Bauer wrote in Revenge that Meghan regularly attended high-profile Hollywood parties hosted by Brett Ratner over a period of years.
The lack of substance. There's a lack of substance when it comes to Meghan. And I think that describes her perfectly.
She silences him when she knows that he's about to speak utter rubbish, and she's embarrassed. That's the real problem.
On top of that, a former childhood acquaintance, Ninaki Priddy, told Bauer that Meghan was highly ambitious and focused on building connections that could elevate her status, even from a young age. That combination of claims, connections, and timing is exactly why this situation keeps drawing attention. It's not just one piece, it's how all the pieces start lining up. That's not coming from me, that's coming from someone who actually knew her growing up, long before the fame, long before the spotlight hit. Now this is where things start to feel a lot more uncomfortable. At the time, the man who owned around 60% of Soho House was Ron Burkle, an American billionaire. His name appears in Jeffrey Epstein's personal address book. It shows up in flight logs tied to Jeffrey's private jet. And when the US Department of Justice released another batch of Jeffrey-related court documents in January 2024, Burkle's name surfaced again. To be clear, his name wasn't listed as part of any criminal charge, but it was significant enough to trigger headlines across major outlets worldwide. Let's keep this grounded in facts.
Bauer, author of Betrayal, Power, Deceit, and the Fight for the Future of the Royal Family, a forensic examination of the many contradictions and controversies surrounding Prince Harry and Meghan Markle over the past 7 years.
There is no verified evidence showing that Burkle had any direct relationship with Meghan. That claim does not appear in credible reporting, and it's not being made here. But what is on record is this. The man who helped build the social network and environment that eventually connected Meghan to Harry has documented public links to Jeffrey. That's not speculation. That's part of official records. And that connection is exactly the kind of detail that writers like Burchill are now pulling into the spotlight. in a publication that has been around for over 200 years. Then things escalated fast. In February 2026, just days after Prince Andrew's arrest made headlines, a photo spread across the internet like wildfire. 7 women on a yacht under the Mediterranean sun, all smiling, with 2 red arrows drawn onto the image, one pointing at Meghan Markle, the other pointing at a woman labelled as Karina Shuliak, who has been reported as one of Jeffrey's former associates. Russian state media pushed the image with a bold caption linking the two, and within hours it exploded across platforms, Facebook, Reddit, X, millions of views almost instantly. But here's where the story shifts again.
One of the things that Prince Harry says about Meghan Markle, and remember, this is a guy who didn't bother to check in with her father to learn anything about the wife that he was marrying, who was, according to her, the second time around, right?
Fact-checkers stepped in, and Snopes took a close look at the image. Their findings were clear. The photo itself is real, completely unedited, and Meghan does appear in it. But the identity of the second woman, that part was wrong. The woman highlighted in the image was not Karina Shuliak at all. It was actually Flavia Sion, an Italian lifestyle blogger known for her page The Chic Picnic. The original photo was posted back on August 10, 2016 by photographer Carla Duca, who tagged Flavia by name at the time. So while the image itself is genuine, the viral claim attached to it completely fell apart under verification. The identification was inaccurate, and that changes the entire narrative around it. But here's the part you really need to understand. Don't let one mistake make you throw everything else out, because that debunk actually makes the real questions harder to ignore, not easier. The photo is real. It hasn't been edited, it hasn't been altered, and Meghan is clearly in it. She's on a yacht in the Mediterranean off the coast of Formentera in the Balearic Islands, Spain. And the timing. August 2016, just weeks before her relationship with Harry became official.
Julie Burchill, who I think is one of the most fabulous and brave and unfiltered and hilarious columnists in all of the United Kingdom, bringing the Meghan Markle yacht girl questions, at least. I mean, she has been careful.
And she's not there alone. Other women in that photo include Misha Nonu and Heather Dorak, confirmed through their own social media tags at the time. Now here's why that matters. Misha Nonu isn't just some casual connection. She's the designer behind the shirt Meghan wore during her very first public appearance with Harry. She was deeply involved in those early circles, right at the center of key introductions. So yes, the misidentified person in that viral claim was wrong, completely wrong, and that's important because facts be corrected. But correcting that mistake doesn't erase everything else. The yacht is real, the network around that moment is real, the timing lines up, the people involved are confirmed, and none of those core details have been disputed. Now keep the name Burchill in mind, because this next part barely stayed in the headlines. In December 2021, something surfaced that major media outlets covered briefly, and then moved on from fast. David Boies, chairman of Boies Schiller Flexner, one of the most powerful litigation firms in the United States, gave an interview to the Daily Beast.
Look, I want to take you through the Julie Burchill column because it's just so much fun anyway, P. Dinah, because obviously this Australian girls' weekend is nothing more than a money-making sham. When I read that my role model in spreading jam to flower, speaking the truth to power, will be hosting a women-only weekend retreat in Sydney during her forthcoming Australia jaunt, with tickets a steal at 2,699 Australian dollars. I already had my credit card in my hot little hand.
At the time, he was representing Virginia Giuffre in her civil case against Prince Andrew. During that interview, he revealed that his legal team had considered deposing Meghan Markle, not as a defendant, but as a potential witness. And the reasoning? These were his exact words, published December 21st, 2021. She is in the US, so we have jurisdiction over her too. She was obviously, at least for a period of time, a close associate of Prince Andrew, and is therefore in a position to have seen what he did, or at minimum to have heard people talk about it. That statement alone raised serious attention, because it placed her name inside a legal conversation tied to one of the most closely watched cases at the time. She's somebody we can count on to tell the truth. That's what Boies said, and that line carries weight. He only had room for around 10 to 12 depositions total, that's it. No extras, no wasted moves.
Really interesting, isn't it? Sure, it's baby steps, but the fact that we now have a mainstream media figure, a very famous one, posing the question directly, I want to ask Meghan Markle about her yacht girl past. The key line there, and the line that really, really interested me, was not a question about whether she was a yacht girl, but just simply stating as a fact and then asking, was it double figures or triple in terms of how many yachts she was a guest on before she met Prince Harry?
He wasn't about to spend one of those on someone irrelevant. The fact that Meghan was even being considered shows he believed she had meaningful proximity and potentially useful insight connected to Prince Andrew's situation. Now think about this for a second. Boys openly said he would not depose Queen Elizabeth, out of respect for her age and her position. He drew a clear line there. But Meghan? No such exception, no special treatment, nothing. That decision alone says a lot.
The UK's oldest periodical, The Spectator. This is quite a surprising place for her to do it. It is part of this wider examination.
One of the most powerful attorneys in the United States, a man who has gone up against the government, major studios, and massive corporations, looked at the Duchess of Sussex and saw someone who could potentially provide relevant testimony in a case tied to Geoffrey. And not because of rumours, not because of online chatter, but because of her documented proximity to Prince Andrew and the social circles surrounding him. That's not speculation, that's a legal strategy being discussed publicly. Then the timeline starts moving fast.
Meghan Markle yacht girl claims simply will not go away. And I've spoken about this before, but until now, no one in the mainstream media has been brave enough to go there. Well, that has just changed.
On January 12th, 2022, Judge Lewis Kaplan denied Prince Andrew's motion to dismiss the case, pushing it forward toward discovery. Depositions were getting closer. Then just 5 weeks later, on February 15th, 2022, the case was suddenly settled, reportedly for around £12 million. And just like that, it was over before any deposition involving Meghan could even happen.
Once a Soho House basic, always a Soho House basic.
This guy has been around all of the time. Isn't that suspicious to you? Because it is for me. It is something strange.
And then the story takes a darker turn. In April 2025, Virginia Giuffre passed away at her farm in Western Australia at the age of 41. Her family stated that the long-term impact of her experiences had become too much to carry. Later that year, a memoir titled Nobody's Girl was released, sharing more of her story. Now here's the key point about Boys. He didn't make those comments randomly. He was fully aware of the broader network, Soho House connections, overlapping elite circles, and publicly documented associations that had already been discussed in various reports. He understood how different social worlds could intersect, and he laid out his reasoning clearly in that Daily Beast interview.
4-year-old tape of a Meghan who is about to marry a prince.
A guy sent me a tape of this model/actress 4 years ago, and she is tossing his salad, and
Nice.
it's,
Yes.
oral sex.
Yes, eat the scrum.
And
Yes.
I said, great, how do you know this guy? Well, he's a photographer. He's based in Florida. I was doing some stuff with him. Okay. I said, who is the person we're talking about here? Before I call my lawyer and get anybody involved in this, you have to tell me. So then she says, her name is Meghan, and she's about to marry a prince.
And through all of that, despite her name being mentioned in that context, Meghan has not publicly responded to those specific remarks. Here's the pattern that almost nobody wants to talk about. Not even the claims themselves, but the silence that surrounds them. Because the Sussexes absolutely know how to deny something when they choose to. That's not up for debate. When Bauer released Revenge, pushback came quietly through aligned media voices. When Scobie's Endgame caused backlash, they responded with carefully worded non-answers. They have legal teams, PR strategists, and a full system built to respond fast and precisely when needed. And when betrayal dropped,
This gentleman right here, that's Nick Jones, the original founder of Soho House. Guess where he's going there? He's arriving at Meghan Markle and Harry's wedding as guest of honor. Oh yeah, Soho was present.
they didn't stay quiet that time. They came out swinging. They called it a deranged conspiracy, accused Bauer of building claims about people he doesn't even know, and fired off statements to outlets like Newsweek and GB News all at once. PR expert Renee Smith, founder of the Atticism Agency, told The Express that the response made them look seriously rattled, and that Bauer had likely struck a nerve. But look closely at what that statement actually does. It goes after the author. It questions his methods, his credibility, his intent. But what it does not do is just as important.
And we also have this. Now look at the below one. This is Karina Shuliak, Epstein's girlfriend. Challenge, find her on the yacht photo. It has always been in plain sight. We have, you know that people are, this theory of the 6 degrees of separation. That we are separated from every other person in this planet by only 6 degrees. Okay, so if Meghan Markle has hang out with Karina, then she was separated from Jeffrey Epstein just by 1 degree. What? That will be 1 degree, right? Or 2 degrees. That will be 2 degrees?
It never directly addresses the specific claims being talked about. There's no mention of yachts, no mention of Soho House, no mention of Ron Burkle, no mention of David Boys or any of the overlapping social connections from those earlier years. Not once. Not in a single clear sentence. Looking across every major public statement released since 2020, there isn't a direct, on-the-record denial of those specific claims. Not from Meghan, not from Harry, not from their representatives, not from affiliated PR firms. They've denied other things strongly and clearly. Stories about influence, internal disputes, media narratives, they've pushed back on all of that. But on this specific topic, nothing direct, nothing detailed, nothing that clearly shuts it down, just silence. And here's where it becomes important to stay grounded. Silence on its own doesn't prove anything. That's not how facts work.
And I know what you're going to say. Maybe it was just that one trip. No, there were quite a few trips. There's actually quite a lot of pictures about them. There are 2 pictures that leaked.
I wonder if Prince Andrew's going to come out and say, hey, Harry, I did your wife quite a few times on yachts before you got her.
There could be many reasons for not responding publicly, especially on complex or sensitive topics. But what stands out is the contrast. How quickly and strongly other claims were addressed, while this area has not received the same kind of direct response.
For the highlight of the weekend will be an in-person conversation with Meghan, Duchess of Sussex. I don't think it'll be what we generally consider a conversation, characterised by the exchange of views and information. No one will get to ask anything interesting, like how many yachts was she a guest on before she met her prince?
That gap is what keeps people asking questions, and it's why this conversation hasn't gone away. So here's where things stand right now. This is the timeline as it unfolded. Step by step. Prince Andrew's arrest hit on February 19th. Just 3 weeks earlier, the Department of Justice had released millions of pages of Jeffrey-related documents, over 3 million pages suddenly out in the open. Then everything accelerated fast.
And I will repeat once again that David Boys, the former lawyer for the late Virginia Giuffre, wanted Meghan Markle to give a deposition on behalf of Virginia Giuffre to give evidence in court about what she knew in regards to Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's behaviour. There is clearly public interest around this.
Within 72 hours of Andrew's arrest, the yacht-related claims surged out of independent media and started appearing across major platforms. What had once stayed on the fringes was now being discussed at a much wider level. On March 17th, Julie Burchill published her column in The Spectator, putting those questions into print.
What is she doing on the yacht? Why did David Boys want to question her? Why is she with Karina Shuliak? Why are there people in Meghan's social circle, that are in the same social circle as Andrew?
Then the very next day, Dan Wooten pushed forward additional claims on his Substack, reaching a massive audience almost instantly. And right in the middle of all this, Tom Bauer's betrayal entered the picture and changed the scale of the conversation completely. Even though the book mainly focuses on more recent years, its release, serialized in the Times of London, backed by a major publisher, and reviewed across mainstream outlets, gave the broader discussion a level of visibility it hadn't reached before.
Was coming to New York all the time. She was in New York when Andrew was in New York for an entire month in September 2013.
That's why the response from the Sussex camp stood out so strongly. It wasn't just about specific claims, it was about the shift into mainstream coverage. Royal correspondent Jack Royston from Newsweek even warned that their reaction could trigger the Streisand effect, drawing more attention to the very story they were trying to challenge. And that's exactly what happened.
I want to ask Meghan Markle about her yacht girl past. To me, it feels like quite a significant moment because, of course, there is so much about Meghan Markle's time on those yachts that we do not know. And I will repeat once again that David Boies, the former lawyer for the late Virginia Giuffre, wanted Meghan Markle to give a deposition on behalf of Virginia Giuffre.
By March 15th, Betrayal had already reached #1 on Amazon before physical copies had even shipped. That kind of surge doesn't happen quietly.
This is Rachel Meghan Markle in 2006 at a Hamptons party where Harvey Weinstein was there. But of course, nobody was mentioning Meghan Markle because she was a nobody.
The reaction itself helped push the book further into the spotlight, bringing even more attention to the surrounding conversation.
And I think your viewers will be interested in this, is when Meghan, before she gets married, meets a very, very famous and important member of the British establishment. And that person is brought in every 3 to 4 weeks to Kensington Palace to tell Meghan about what her duties will be and how her life will follow her marriage to Harry, a part of the royal family.
And here's the bigger picture. Once a topic crosses into established media, with editorial oversight, legal review, and institutional backing, it tends to stay in public discussion much longer. It's no longer confined to smaller corners of the internet. That shift changes how widely it's seen, how it's discussed, and how long it sticks around. Everything laid out here comes straight from the public record.
What we've seen recently is the wokest of the woke turn on Harry and Meghan. It's their own kind turning on.
Verified facts, named sources, documented reports, and court filings. Nothing hidden, nothing invented. None of us were in those private rooms, that's true, but the paper trail speaks loudly on its own.
An event with 300 women present will not be a fireside chat. Julie Birchall recalls, on my 50th birthday many moons ago, I thought it would be fun to invite 50 close female friends on a steaming July day to a daytime celebration at a gorgeous Brighton beach bar. Mostly media girls down from London with a smattering of local sex workers, and within a few hours it was mayhem. There was one catfight, a serious slugfest, which an actual bounce had to break up. 2 alfresco lesbian hookups, which brought complaints from passing parents.
When a columnist at one of Britain's oldest magazines prints those yacht questions in black and white, that matters. When one of America's most powerful lawyers publicly names Meghan as a potential witness in a case tied to Jeffrey, that matters. When a brand audit reportedly delivers a harsh assessment about commercial impact, that also gets attention. And then look at the response pattern. Each time the focus shifts to challenging the messenger, the author, the journalist, the source, but without directly addressing every specific point being raised. That approach stands out, especially when compared to how other claims have been handled.
You're doing the Lord's work, Tom Bauer, having to count the word Todger in the book Spare. I mean, what must have Meghan thought? Actually, you talk about that. You say she's exhausted by the book in the end, and she just wants to focus on her own pursuits. But I would be embarrassed as the wife to have that. I mean, Jimmy Kimmel goes after him over this, and I would be humiliated over him fixating on this in his big book.
Well, it just shows you what a child he is, a schoolboy, not realizing the damage he was inflicting on himself, the humiliation, the parody. What?
At a certain point, the lack of direct answers becomes part of the conversation itself. Not proof of anything on its own, but enough to keep questions alive and people watching closely. And here's why this story keeps building. Across 8 years, 3 continents, and multiple individuals, people who didn't know each other, all tried in different ways to bring attention to overlapping circles and experiences. Some faced backlash, others were ignored, but the pattern of repeated claims and connections is what keeps this discussion going.
Constantly surprised and constantly finding out new things and adventures that his wife did, whether it be travelling to another country, learning a new language, etc. And sometimes he says some of the things he's never heard of before. He didn't know she'd done it.
That doesn't automatically confirm conclusions, but it does explain why the topic refuses to fade away. And this is just the beginning of what's being unpacked. If this video made you think differently or showed you something you hadn't considered before, hit like. It really does help push this out so more people can see it before it disappears from the feed. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next, because the next part goes even deeper into details that haven't been fully explored yet. And drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know what you think about all of this.